Hi, I'm Kim Skinner, owner and CEO of StampingImperfection.com. And I wanted to share a couple projects that I just made with you and show you how to make one. And show you that when you make something, there are a lot of different ways that you can actually use this. So I started out making this tag, which is what I'm going to show you today. And I used quite a few punches. I used my Big Shot for a couple of things. I used a lot of little things. But then I wanted to see what else could I do with this little tree design. I decided I wanted to make a little gift tag, so I did that. I also wanted to make a matching bag, so I made a version of it with just an inexpensive gift bag from a craft store. If you look on the clearance rack, a lot of times you'll find these in like packages of 20 for just a couple of dollars. So I like to, every year, I stopped buying gift wrap years ago, and I started just using gift bags. My kids are older, so since they're in college now, they're perfectly happy with this, and I like to decorate them. I like to make little matching tags. And the nice thing about this is, there are two things about this. These can be reused. The other thing is, when Christmas is over and you've got your pictures taken, you're ready to make some scrapbook pages, these elements can be just attached or used in on a scrapbook page. You could even cut this out and just attach it to a scrapbook page. And with the picture of the gift sitting under the tree and a picture of the person opening the gift or some other part of your holiday celebration, you have a perfect scrapbook page already made. You just have to put it together. So that's a really good use for all these little elements that you're making this early before Christmas. So let me show you how I got started, and then I'll tell you what I changed about each of those. For this tag, I used a piece of craft paper, and I cut it at 2 1/4 by 4 inches. Just a little piece of craft paper. I used a piece of Designer Series Christmas paper, and I went digging through my stash. This isn't even current Christmas paper. I'm sure you have something in your stash. I love the Designer Series paper though, because it's two-sided, and the sides actually match when you get done. So you can put them together to actually form a really nice little element for your gift tags. I actually keep a little plastic box next to my cutting table, next to my trimmer, and I just put all the pieces in it. And then when I want to make projects like this that aren't very big, I just grab stuff out of my stash, and it's amazing what you can find. You don't really need very much paper to do this. You need little pieces. I used a little piece of like chocolate chip that I had, a little piece of this left over after I'd done some cutting, and I used a little bit of the Very Vanilla that I'd had left over from another project. And I'm talking bits like this. When I cut out a perfect pennants for a project, all of this stuff left over you can stamp on and cut out with your punches or trim with your trimmer and come up with all of these little tags and things. So save those pieces. I know some people would call me cheap. I like to think of myself as frugal. I do have 2 kids in college, so again, stamping on a budget. So to start out with this project, the first thing that I did was I wanted to trim off the corners. Now, but what I did was once I snipped off the first one, then I had a little template I could use. I just lined up this, and I just snipped with my paper snippers. You could do this on your trimmer if you wanted to make sure it was really straight. And then the one that I snipped off, I just flipped over on the other side so that both of the edges were exactly the same. And I just trimmed that way. And if you wanted it to be a little bit more with a flat top, you could do something like that. I took my Crocodile, this gigantic thing, which is just really a glorified hole puncher for me because I don't like to use brads, and I punched a big hole in the top. And then I took a piece of Very Vanilla, and I used this label punch, and I cut out a little label like this. using this label punch out of a piece of scrap berry vanilla. So I had those two pieces. Then I also used my designer series paper, and with my Petite Pennants builder, it's got two little pennant shaped things, two little triangles. I just cut out on my designer series paper two of these, and the beautiful thing about this was, and then with the leftover I just took a strip from the bottom edge of the paper or the side of the paper, so I ended up with a little strip that I could use as my tag. And these are about a 1/2 inch by 2 1/4, so that's about what they are, somewhere around there. So now I have these two little pennant pieces. I liked the red, the larger one I used with the red facing, and the smaller one just layers on top. I'm just going to use a piece of snail to, oops, always doing that, to adhere to the smaller pennant to the top pennant. And I don't know about you, but if you have kids, this pennant punch and the Pennant Bigs die is just screaming scrapbook page to me. Okay, so you have something like that. The next thing I did was, with my Sahara sand, I used my little Sahara sand punch, and I just use that to just sponge the edges. And if you notice, I sponge the edges of the die, I sponge the edges of the paper. It's hardly noticeable, but it adds such a nice little touch. So I just did that and went along the edge, tried to get a little bit on top. It gives it a kind of a nice little weathered look, and I like that the edges are just darker. And I kind of sponged a little on the inside. Okay, I did the same thing with my little tag punch. I really like the way it darkened up the edges. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to write the name of the person this gift is for with one of my Stampin' Write markers. Probably a red one or a green one. Okay, so I have that all done. And I sponged it a little bit inside to give it a really weathered look. After that, I just had to put it all together now, really. I have all the elements created. Oh, I also took a strip of chocolate chip and I ran it through my wood grain embossing folder. I ran it through this. I just put the strip down. So I ran it through my embossing folder through my Big Shot. So the wood, it really looks like an authentic little Christmas tree base. So now I'm just going to put the pieces together. I'm going to start by taking the strip of designer series paper that I saved, put a little piece of snail on the back. I lined this across the bottom edge. Okay. Then I just trimmed it off. I always flip it over, and then I just hold my scissors against the edge and trim off the edges. Just holding it against the edge of that craft paper there and trimming off the edges so I have a nice little thing like this. And then I cut a little chunk for the tree trunk, attach snail to the back of that, or to one side of that. Took the little pennant tree figure that I made, attached that with snail, and I overlapped this a little bit. However much you like that trunk sticking out. And then I also put a piece of snail on the back of this and line that up here along the top like that. Used my hole puncher to punch holes on each side like that. And then I took two brads from, these are the Regals collection, and I just picked two of there are two different colors of reds in here. I just picked two of the darker reds because I like the way they match the paper I was using. I could have probably also picked green. Green would have been pretty too, because I think the green almost, or probably does match. This looks like paper that matches the Regals collection. So I just put the brads through this. So you have that, and the last thing left is to attach some kind of string or ribbon. I kind of like the way this linen thread looks, so I just cut off a piece of this with my paper snips, and I folded it over a couple of times, and then I put the loops through this giant hole that I made, and then just caught them in the loop and pulled it up. Then the next thing I did was snip this, trim off any that are too long. I don't know, I kind of like them not quite the same length, but I'll make them all the same length. Then I have this to actually tie on the side of the bag if I want to, so that I can put the person's name on it. So I really, that is just so quick and easy, and you're using up your paper scratch. You're not really spending any money. You're using stuff you already have in your stash to do that. Now, I also made a little tag like this, just a slight little twist. This is cut at 3 by 6 inches. I scored it at 3, so you have a little tag. With this one, I wanted to try something a little bit different with this. So this is actually, the size of this is actually a 3 by 5 piece of craft paper, or natural craft paper, and then the frame around it is 3.5 by 5.5. It's the same designer series paper, but I put them down, and then I ran it through my Petals Plenty embossing folder. See if you can see that. I can't see it at all. I'm hoping you can. But I like this. It almost looks like, if you do it on red paper, I feel like it looks like poinsettias. You could use this in the spring, but it really does look like poinsettias. So with the two of these adhered together, I ran them together through the Petals of Plenty, and I really like the way that looked. I love the texture of this. So it's all exactly the same. The only difference is I felt like it needed a little something else, and since I'm going to put a tag with the person's name on it, I didn't feel like I needed a tag there. I wanted a sentiment. So I used the Mixed Metally Hostess set from the Holiday Mini Catalog, and I used the Snowflake, which I stamped in Garden Green, and I used the Merry Christmas, which I stamped in Cherry Cobbler, and cut them out with my punches. The Cherry Cobbler sentiment was cut out with my 3/4 inch circle. The Snowflake punch, which I did in green, was cut out with my 1¼ inch scallop circle punch, and this is also in the Holiday Mini. I love these little punches. I've never regretted buying a punch. I use them constantly, and it really looks like a little tiny wreath. It really turned out nice. So I think you get 3 really quick projects. You saw how quickly I was able to put that all together just using little scraps of paper. And now I've got 3 tags and a nice bag that I can use. It'll make a nice presentation for a Christmas gift. So if you're interested in more little tips and tricks and things you can do with pieces of scrap, or different ways you can use the tools that you're purchasing, please go to my website, stampingimperfection.com, and sign up for my mailing list. My mailing list subscribers get a free monthly newsletter full of tips, tricks, card ideas, scrapbook page ideas, all kinds of little tutorials that you can use to really add some really nice touches to your cards. You'll also, just for signing up for my mailing list, get 3 video tutorials with some pretty interesting and awesome ideas to add little touches to your cards. So, thanks for watching.